God, it's so exciting. Happy Hail Bob Day.
It is a happy Hail Bob Day.
That was our elo coming into the competition.
Eventing Manager is back.
Best show that we have, Alphabetti Spaghetti.
Looking forward to seeing Cooley Horses.
I mean, you're a bit of an eventing geek just like us.
Welcome to the Echo Ratings Eventing Podcast, and we have got listeners for you, a Connolly's Red Mill special. Now, this show is one that we have been talking about doing for a few months. It has been a little while since we have had these two guests on the podcast, but the last time they were on, it was one of the most popular episodes that we have ever done. So no pressure this time. Richard and Georgie Sheane of Cooley Farm, welcome back to the podcast.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's good to be back.
Everybody is looking for the secrets on how to find their future superstars. But we really wanted to explore the Cooley Farm story a little bit more. And I think probably the best place to start for anybody who isn't familiar with Cooley Farm, they've probably seen lots of Cooley prefixes on horses. The name stands out to them, but maybe don't know the story. So let's kind of rewind slightly, because it was back in, God, I think it was 2010. So it's only 12 years ago that you had your first international horse with the Cooley name. A lot has happened in the last 12 years. So first of all, introduce us to the Cooley story, Georgina, and where it came from.
Well, Richard and I both come from a small village in County Wicklow in Ireland called Glenealy. And we got married, and we married each other. I mean, it's a running joke, but we married each other because I wanted a fella from Glenealy, because I came from Glenealy and I loved my mum and dad and I didn't want to leave Glenealy. And he wanted somebody with a cross-country course, and it seemed to be a perfect partnership, so we got married. I'm not sure there was anything more to it than that. Luckily now we seem to have navigated our way through marriage and quite like each other, which is good. But we saw that there was an opening in eventing. Richard had a background in show jumping. I had done a little bit of eventing, albeit at a bad level. I had done it, and we realised that there was a market to be captured. So we quickly decided that we needed to name our products, because we wanted to be proud of our products. And my family home was called Barana Coola, and his family home was Cool Nakilly. And we wanted a name that was easy to pronounce in any language around the world, because we were arrogant and thought that we would have horses going around the world. And so we came up with the word Cooley, which was easy to pronounce and easy to spell.
And as a commentator, I thank you massively for that, because trust me when I say not everybody is as kind. Talk us through the kind of, I hate to use the word journey, but your first horse that you bought, am I right in saying that you sold your car and bought a horse, and that was kind of the start of Cooley Farm as such?
Yeah, now I'd like to clarify that slightly. Richard sold my car. It wasn't as simple as it wasn't yes, but we did. Yeah, we bought a horse from Jim Derwin. And we trucked down the road. We borrowed my mother's Jeep and box at the time. And literally that is where it started. But like everything in life, we have had to work so hard. We were just coming out of a massive recession in Ireland. Well, it was in the middle of a massive recession. The banks wouldn't lend us any money. We didn't have any money ourselves except for the car. And my mum and dad were very, very generous and let us stable up in their place, which had 6 stables. We came with no capital, and so everything that we got, we had to work for. And that had its advantages and it had its disadvantages. Obviously, the disadvantages were we couldn't buy a lot of horses. We had to just sell a horse to buy another horse, to sell a horse to buy another. But the advantages were that as our journey progressed, we learned a lot, because when you're spending only your own money, you definitely think a lot more than if you're spending anyone else's money. So Richard couldn't ever screw up in the purchases that he made. Not now, in fairness, he's a genius when it comes to buying horses, but there was no room for error, because otherwise we literally couldn't put food on the table. It was kind of that serious. So our little journey was tough, and it has continued to always be tough, and we worked very, very hard. But we learned so much in those years, and we'd always say the worst thing that could have happened to us was somebody come along and say, here's a wad of money, get going.
You know, it would have been easier in lots of ways, perhaps, but not better long term. I absolutely love, you know, the work ethic side of things, and it's something that we're going to talk about, because I think it's a really important point to touch upon, and to kind of it's intertwined throughout the success of the last 12 years, and I have no doubt that it's going to play its part in the future as well. Everything from Richard, I know, if you need to go and see a horse at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night because somebody else is going to go and see it at 7 o'clock the following morning and it's 3 hours away, you'll jump in the car and you'll go and do it. I think that's fair to say, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to be ahead of the next man, because especially now with one thing actually I was going to say about the start off, there was no Facebook or no internet is probably too strong, but there wasn't this kind of a marketplace that has really, especially through COVID, has really eluded. But when we started, it was all word of mouth, and a lot less, probably the average guy selling a horse in Ireland had a lot less facilities, etc. And I always say I don't think the Cooley thing really couldn't be done again, if that makes sense. I was able to get my hands on the right product. The whole thing was kind of probably a little slower in 2010, 11, 12, in the sense of now you have to be so on the ball because there's so many guys looking. Everybody has a phone. Everybody can make a video of a horse. They put it on WhatsApp. Like, especially now, if I get a video of a horse, okay, there's a few loyal guys to me, but the reality is that they send it to more than me. A lot of the people, are quite a few of the guys that say, "Look, Richard, sent you the video. Give you 2 or 3 days, but I'm sending it. If you're not here, it's going elsewhere." You have to be quicker now than even when we started. But when we started, it was quite a different place from that point of view. Like, you just didn't get a video of a horse. In fact, actually, we were moving some stuff around the other day, and I found discs, where we had, made discs of horses that we had for sale and posted them to clients and stuff. And it's so different now. It's so much quicker. But that was one of the reasons, I suppose, at the time we were buying far lesser numbers, but we were sort of able to get the ones we wanted, and maybe at the at a more commercial price, and then able to sell them, and it allowed us to sell them to the right riders and so on. So there was a lot. It's funny, a few probably people have kind of tried to copy the thing a little bit, but it's not that they're not able to do it, but almost this time it's impossible to do it in, if you know what I mean. It's the supply and the demand and the quickness of everything. I wouldn't like to be trying to start Cooley today, put it that way,
No, and you look back and you think, actually 12 years, it's not a really long period of time, but actually things have changed massively. But you've obviously had to adapt your model to be able to move with those times, because if you'd have stayed, doing discs and posting them out, your postage bill would be through the roof, Richard, but also, you would have been a week, 2 weeks behind everybody else. Can I ask, from a sort of vision perspective, back in 2010 and before that, the early days of Cooley, when, you sold the car and you got the horse, what was the goal? Did you have something in mind that you wanted to build at that point?
Wanted to have the best horse in the world competing at the best events, but it was a long journey. But I would say it was our vision from maybe not the very, very beginning, but the minute, we'll say, you talk about the first international horse, certainly, or even a little bit before that, a few of the horses we'd sold were kind of going well on the national circuits, whether it be here or in the States or in the UK. And definitely from that point, I'm not a man for aiming low, so we aimed high.
And it certainly paid off. Let's kind of go through the process of what you look for and how it kind of shapes up in terms of what's your ideal? Do you have a kind of an age bracket? Do you like the breeding? Would you ever go outside of an Irish horse? Is that sacrilege to say? Like, what do you look for in a horse, Richard, and how do you find them?
So I always say the same thing, a good horse, and that people think it's a real smart answer, but that really is the long and short of it. I don't have, in a perfect world, I'd buy broken and riding 4-year-olds for a few different reasons. The first reason, obviously, is broken and riding. You can see that it has a reasonable attitude to work. It jumps the same under tack. It moves nicely under tack, whatever. But the reality is that it's not possible to buy enough just broken and riding 4-year-olds because there's not enough of those. So we end up buying 3-year-olds. In fact, in the last few years, we've bought a lot of foals. So we have a lot of 3-year-olds coming from foal to 3-year-old, and we'll buy really any age. I don't buy old horses. I very rarely buy a horse over 6 or 7 years old. but I would buy anything that I think is good. And I'm lucky in one respect that I'm not buying for one rider. We have lots of different markets and lots of different riders, and even the top riders, they all kind of ride a different, they like a different thing. Thank goodness, because otherwise we'd only have one or two to sell every year. So that's a good thing. So I suppose good horses. I certainly would buy a horse from anywhere in the world. I think now, I probably get shot by some of the Irish guys saying this, but the reality is that the sport horse breed in Europe is now a mongrel breed, and again, that's probably not a really fashionable way of putting it, but the reality is that there's French and Dutch and German and Belgian bloodlines here in Ireland, and the same in those countries. There's Irish lines, you'd be amazed how many times Cruising and stuff comes up, Cavalier, those different sires out there too. So I think the reality is, there's no point in going around with our heads in the sand. I like buying horses in Ireland because I know the people and I know what to expect from the horses from the different people, and the way they've been broken, whether it be good or bad or indifferent, I kind of know, and I can allow then that in my mind when I'm looking at the horses as to what I expect them to be like and to perform like, especially when I'm trying them. So that stuff obviously makes me confident. There's probably very, very few people here that produce horses that I haven't bought at least two off at this stage. So I know the gig, I suppose, in Ireland, but I certainly have nothing against buying a horse wherever. I have some Irish contacts on the continent. There's a lot of my friends out there that are show jumping, and they would go quite often and find, a horse. They might be trying it as a jumper, but for whatever reason they feel it's a good event horse, and luckily they contact me, and I would generally, I don't go to see them. They would send me maybe some little video, or maybe not, as the case may be, and I would buy those. And a lot of those horses have actually been really quite successful. But as I say, the reality is that the breeds are becoming more and more the same thing. So I think to say that we can only buy them in Ireland is probably, while it would suit me much better in ways, it's probably not the reality anymore.
I think that's fair. And do you always buy, you say you buy off a video as well as seeing them in person?
I buy some off a video, but only when I have a very trusted guy buying it for me. In other words, like my own eyes on the ground. If somebody flicks me a video of ours and I don't know the people, I have to see it. So it's a funny thing. So I have some trusted spotters, and I wouldn't even need the video from those guys, but they generally send me a little video that I could have a look and say, oh yeah, it looks nice or whatever. But those guys, I would trust them. They're the same as me looking at the horse.
Yeah, that's fair. And that, I imagine, is a massive, massive asset to your team to be able to have people that you trust. What about the sort of, say, the kind of the golden ticket as such? So you've got the temperament, paces, and the one thing that stands out for me with the Cooley horses that I know when we last did this show, we very much kind of broke down their jumping records in particular were very, very impressive. And that is that they're jumpers, that you buy really, really good jumpers above. Yeah,
I do. I hate non-jumpers. I came from the jumping world to an extent. I don't like horses that don't jump well, and I don't want to market those horses. So anything I market, I feel jumps to a good level. Now, a jumper and an event horse are probably kind of two different things, but at the end of the day, these guys are rattling around big, solid fences, and you don't want to be doing that on something that doesn't jump. No. I don't want somebody looking at a Cooley horse, wherever it is in the world, slithering over fences. That's not... I'm not doing my job right if you're watching that.
I was going to say, so one of the things that I wanted to ask you about was the Cooley prefix, which is something that we see in a lot of the horses. I'd probably say 95, 98% of those. Would that be fair to say, Georgie, of those horses that have come from Cooley keep the Cooley, which is a brilliant marketing tool. But also you have to be, and again, it comes back to the kind of horses that you're buying and then selling on. You've got to be very confident because everybody sees that horse and knows it's a Cooley horse as well.
We don't sell the horses unless we feel confident. If we had any doubt, even if we sold a horse that was waiting to go and Richard suddenly had a doubt, it wouldn't go. Like it just, we can't. We're the strangest pair. We can't sleep at night thinking we've sold either the wrong horse or a horse that's not able to do it. And, people are very proud to have the Cooley brand. And as I say, 98% of them, the 2% is mainly Will Coleman, who likes to name his horses himself. And it's a long-standing joke with me and him that off the record is not Cooley off the record. But we won't talk about that for too long because it upsets me and it upsets you also. But yes, they like to have the Cooley brand, and it's what they come for, I suppose. And we're very proud of it. But if someone said to us, we don't want to have the Cooley on it, that's also 100%. We totally accept that, you can have whatever name it is. And we always obviously respect the breeders if they're involved in it and everything like that. So yeah, we're very fortunate. I suppose if you come here and you want to get a Cooley horse, and that's what you end up getting.
But I think the ethics come back through there. And I think that's something that shines through massively. Georgie, you just said you're quite funny in that respect. I don't think it's funny at all. I think that is ultimately part of the foundation of what has built such a successful business, because people trust you and they know they can trust you. From the breeding perspective, you just touched upon it there, that actually, obviously, without people breeding really good horses, there aren't the horses for you guys to buy. There aren't the horses for the top guys to compete on. How do you keep those links back to the breeders?
We really support the breeders. Without the breeders, we don't have the horses. But we would also, and I do a bit of breeding on the side, and so I can sit with both hats on. But I would also say that it's a process. So without this, and certainly in Ireland, that's how it's done. So there's the breeders, then there's the producers, and then, ultimately there's the riders. And it's a process, and one doesn't work without the other. And it's naive and stupid to say that we can survive without the breeders, because we can't. But it's also naive and stupid to say that the Irish horse or any of the Cooley horses can't survive without the top riders riding them either. And we are just a link in that chain. That's all we are. And we hope that we promote the breeders as we can, but it's a very complicated supply chain, and nobody works without the other. And so we must always remember that, whether it's Ollie or Piggy or whoever, they're promoting your horse out there, but your horse might not be there if the producers in Ireland didn't produce them to get to that marketplace. You could have a horse and it might never. And we often, Richard and I will often talk about that late at night, like if that horse hadn't gone to that rider, that horse might be still standing in a field, or might not have been correctly produced. And we would be, Richard is just a genius at that, at just saying, right, that horse needs 8 months of just doing this before it can even be shown to anybody. Whereas somebody else might have rushed it, if the horse wouldn't have taken to the job and would never be seen of again. And we could count endless horses that would be the case. And some of the very, very top horses that are out there now are absolute testament to the fact that the groundwork was done correctly. So it's all a chain, and I continually say that without the breeders we wouldn't have the horses, without the producers, and without the buyers. There's a chain.
I think we're very lucky in Ireland that we kind of have skilled people in all three bits. There's very skilled breeders out there, there's very skilled producers out there, and then we have the likes of ourselves for marketing them. I think there's a little bit of a kind of a thing at the minute that, Jenny, we don't, the dealers and this, that and the other, that, we can market them ourselves and stuff. But the reality is that they don't realise that, I suppose, for example, we've sold, this is only now a hearsay, I'm not saying this is the case, but things like this that you sell, 5 horses to a very good rider, but actually one of them doesn't work out, so you have to swap him back and give them another one and stuff like that. I think some people maybe miss that part, and then they're wondering, well, why don't they come directly to us, and they always go to whatever, Cooley or whatever, and they don't realise that there's far more to the service than just having the good horses. That is, of course, crucial, but the reality is that there is a lot to this business. I was just talking about a horse the other day that was up in near Seattle, and the girl has got him, and a long story short, he's probably a little green for her, so the horse has now gone down to a rider down in California to get, it just needs a month's work and it'll be perfect. He'll probably help the girl a little bit on it, and then the horse will go back up again. But that's at my expense and my expertise to organise all that, and our general people we know. There's so much more to it than just buying and selling horses. That's one part. It's an awful lot more to it. Okay, buying and selling is probably the most crucial bit to get that, the buying especially right. But there's a lot to it that people maybe don't realise. And I'm sure, on the other hand, there's bits to it that we don't realise as well. So I think, as Georgie says, it's a very important chain of process. And if the wrong horses get to the right people, or the right horse gets wrong, it all ends up that there's not enough good ones. You have to be getting enough of the right horses to the right people and produced right and bred right, I suppose, in the first place, here or wherever it is,
I think you make a really valid point, and it almost comes down to ultimately you're a horseman, but you have to have that real kind of be a people person as well, because you've got to understand what somebody is looking for and match make what you think they're looking for. And some people, I'm sure, come in with a very, very clear idea of what they're looking for, and they have a particular stamp and a particular way of going and everything that kind of suits them, and that's absolutely fine. But ultimately being able to match make your horses with the riders they're going to be able to form the most successful partnerships. And I think that is an enormous skill in itself. And then sort of being able to keep that chain going past when you've sold them, which means lots of people come back and will buy from you again. Let me ask you about the kind of the setup at home, Georgie, because I know that when we last spoke, you had sort of moved. You started off obviously with a couple of stables at your parents' yard, but actually since then you've had a sort of a big purpose-built facility that you've created very much with your business model in mind. And just talk to me a little bit about what the setup is and how it works with the number of horses that you have and when they come to you and when they move on.
Yeah, so we were very lucky to acquire land in Glenealy directly opposite where we were based. So we required that, but through planning permission and having no money and blah, 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 it's taken a long time. But it's totally purpose-built for exactly what we need. And it kind of through the jigs and the reels of not ever having money, you kind of really realise what you did need over the years. So we have an indoor and we have 30 stables now on site. And we also have where we live, which is really important because above anything in Cooley, the most important thing are our family and our staff. I mean, it all stems from there. And if the family and the staff aren't operating well, then the whole thing doesn't operate. And frankly, Richard and I have absolutely no interest unless everyone's happy in doing this job. So we have this incredible facility, which is a work in progress, because as I look out and I see the front of the place, and I'm still thinking to myself, my golly, we look like a halting site out the front, but the back of it is lovely. And so we were doing great, and then COVID came, and obviously that had a huge effect, not only on our business, but also on we had to suddenly stop building. But we moved in in September of just before COVID. So we were lucky to have our sign here. But yeah, so the horses come here. We also have a lot of land across the road, and we have a rented place further up the road. So we have a lot of youngsters here now. Richard is buying a lot more young horses, which, just helps with our supply chain. We kind of move them in as required, but it's obviously incredibly busy at the moment. I think everyone's come out of COVID and realised, right, we need to restock. So we are flat to the mat with people coming in and with turning horses here. So it's always all go, but we couldn't be in a better place. We're right beside Carrickwood, which is just acres and acres and acres of endless hacking, great for the youngsters. We're close to Dublin Airport for our clients, and it's in Glenealy, which is where Richard and I always decided we wanted to spend the rest of our lives. So we're so blessed, and we know we are.
So you've got 30 stables, but what about the actual number of horses that you would have in? What is the turnover?
Georgie doesn't know how many horses we have.
So this is an ongoing problem. So
don't count them, Georgie. Maybe that's the answer.
He doesn't tell me the truth, and then he'll say, "Yeah, I did tell you about that horse," and you're like, "No, you didn't." But yeah, so Richard, how many horses would we have? It's being recorded.
Oh, we've a lot. No, we've got 150 horses.
So that's really interesting. So when we last did a show with you guys back in 2019, there were again 30 horses sort of in work as such, and you bought 100 and sold 100 within a year, and then there were 100 horses, including those in work at the farm. or dotted about that you had. That's fascinating. So the increase up to 150, is that because you are now buying more young stock and therefore the turnover is that they are with you?
The increase, there's about 60 horses which are from foal to 3 years old. So that is the increase. And that's something we've only done for the last, kind of 4 years, but 4/5 years. We did a few the year before. So I just was looking at the market probably, whatever it is, 7 years ago, and I was thinking, bloody hell, it's getting harder and harder to get my hands on these horses. And I suppose it's when the internet starts to really take over as concerns marketing horses. And there was a lot of horses, I think, leaving the country as, 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds and so on. And a lot more people were coming in and buying those, we'll say, in the countryside. So I said, right, we need to be ahead of that sort of curve. So I said, we're going to start buying foals, which we did. And we have a farm rent in Carlow where we do foals in partnership with Niall and Samantha Smith. And there's a lot of them there. And then there's some here as well. But they have a great setup there, loose sheds and all the rest of it. So it's a great way of sort of having a whole bunch of 3-year-olds. Now, obviously, there's the downside to that is that some of these 3-year-olds don't X-ray or maybe aren't good enough or whatever. But in our first couple of batches, it's really worked quite well. I have a couple of very, very nice horses that do have good X-rays and so on. So I think that's something we'll be continuing and possibly increasing on. I kind of wanted to do 4 or 5 years to see, so we're buying roughly between 10 and 15, just to see, how we got on with the whole, were they good enough and did they X-ray well enough and things like that before we went into it in a massive way. But it is nice to be able to buy them at that stage because you get your biggest pick is going to be at that stage, and the mare lines and stuff that you can acquire are, really, really quite good. There's a lot of very good horses out of, say, cruising mares or puissance mares. And to be honest, they're getting hard to get your hands on as a 3- and 4-year-old. Whereas as foals, you can still buy them, reasonably easily. Or find them reasonably easy. Maybe buying them is not so easy, but you can find them. You can find them and put your hands on them. And so that's a kind of a new part to the whole thing. And it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But so far, so good. But I'm always a little dubious. It could be beginner's luck, so we'll wait another little while before we increase it massively. But we might increase that as time goes on.
I love how you just, told Georgie that you'd be increasing when you didn't even put a number on the horses when we were recording, so she can't say anything. I think that was excellent tactics. I've a
little bit of practice at talking to her now, so I know how to do it.
Can I ask you about the kind of what happens when these young horses come back to the farm and sort of the non-negotiables for you, the things that you immediately look at and say, right, okay, what are we working with here and how that ties in? And I guess then we come into the conversation around your relationship with Connolly's Red Mills and the impact that they have on your yard as well.
To start with, we have a kind of a process when the horses arrive here. Most horses that arrive here are broken in riding. Some of them very, very green, but they are broken in riding. Of course, there's some unbroken horses here, and we do some breaking here now, which we wouldn't have done in the past. But I have a very, very good guy that works for me, and he does some along with doing other bits and pieces. But so we kind of have a process where the horses arrive, they get hacked in company, then they're hacked on their own, they're ridden in the school, there's a bit of pressure put on them in the school, and basically after 4 or 5 days, I would have seen some of it, or maybe if I'm on the road looking at horses, I'll have talked to the riders in the evening to see. We kind of we've done so many, and we know the way horses react to our facility and to our hacking. Our hacking is probably second to none. I always say if I won the Euro Millions, I couldn't recreate it because it's 3,500 acres of forest. It has streams, it has little ditches, it has mucky patches, it has all that type of thing. and it's 365 days a year we can go into it. So it's a huge thing that we know how horses react to the, what's coming up. And their reaction isn't that if they do one thing it's terrible and if they do another it's great. But it gives you, after that 4 or 5 days, you have a real feel of what the horse needs to do and whether he's a right or a wrong one. You sometimes, unfortunately, in those 5 days realise, flip me, what I bought isn't really going to work, and those horses have to be out. But in general, it gives us an idea of a few things, I suppose, who you can sell it to, who might like it, and what we need to do in the next, let it be 5 days or 5 months, what we need to do with this horse, and have a good idea of that. And we need to know that fast, because we have to sell horses here every week. The only money that comes into Cooley Farm is selling horses. And I think it can put us under pressure at times, but it's a very healthy thing for our clients. Because, funny, I had a high-profile rider on the phone yesterday morning, and he'll remain nameless, but a very high-profile, we all know him well, and he hasn't been to Cooley. And he said to me, Richard, I just figured out, you have a lot of good clients there. There wasn't really much point, I'm going to be bottom of the list. And I explained, which I've explained to many people, that's not the case even remotely. If you're here and I have a nice horse, I need to sell him. So that's the reality, is that we need to sell horses every week. So if somebody arrives here and there's a nice horse and they have the money and they like him, they're going to own him. That's it. Let you be Oliver Townend or whoever. If you want a good one and you arrive, you'll get him. But for us, to get back to what I was talking about before, for us, the process, I need to know quickly what the horses are. So we sort of honed that down to within a week. I'm not saying I'll know everything about them, but I'll know a lot about them at that point. And then back to what I was saying earlier, if they've come from Ireland, which 99% have, I'll also know from where they came from a little bit, what I should be expecting. So it means you can market them quickly then, or if you're planning on maybe running them on a little bit or whatever, you quickly know where you are with them, which is very important.
They're like a Formula One, with the pit stop in the Formula One. That's what happens. They get their teeth done. We have Huey Ryan does their teeth. We have an incredible farrier, Connell Gallagher, and then we have the best of haylage here. They're bedded to their straw, and then we have Red Mills feed, and it's nothing more complicated than that. It's just a simple situation. They go into the pit stop and they come out of the pit stop, worm dose, all that barky, and regardless of where the horse comes from, that's what happens to every one of the horses that arrive in Cooley. And then it's just because we then know that's all been done and we move on to the next process.
Connolly's Red Mills has been, a crucial kind of part of our journey, I suppose, in a way. But I grew up in a house where you weren't allowed to feed a horse anything other than Connolly's, so we work kind of closely with them. I'm a bit funny about the way of feeding horses. I'd say most people would get an awful shock if they saw me going with a bucket, but most of my horses come maybe a little bit thin and I want them to be fat. So as I am a testament to myself, if you eat plenty, you get fat. So that's my theory. So and it's been working for as long as it has. So we feed them very well, but there's loads of feeds out there. But if you want a horse looking good in 10 days, there's only one feed, Red Mills.
And it's one of those certainties in life. Like we've always said Red Mills has nothing to do with any type of relationship as such, although we've kind of come to know each other, because it wouldn't matter we would always feed Red Mills. It's just our thing. We're weird like that. We'll always be in Glen Ely and we'll always be feeding Red Mills as long as we have horses. So it's just a certainty with us. Richard did say some of the horses come and they're picky. They don't want to eat, and we need them to eat today, like not start in 4 or 5 days time. And they like the feed, and it's just so important that they start eating from day one.
I find this really, really interesting, and I think it comes back to something else that intertwines its way through your business, your setup, how your client relationships work, how your relationships work with the people that you buy horses from. Trust. You just said that you trust Red Mills, and therefore, why fix what isn't broken? Ultimately, the horses love it. They do really well on it, and it gets you the results. And therefore, it just is something that is a vital cog in the wheel of Cooley Farm. What about the kind of the philosophy at home of training the horses, and what do you like to do with them, Richard? Because I know the facilities have obviously you've had that kind of over the years that you've been working to build the farm, you've kind of picked and chosen the things that you find really useful. So what are the things that actually you love to do with your young horses and that you find gives them a really, really valuable foundation for their future?
Well, I suppose the absolute ultimate, and kind of like the Red Mill feed, the main thing is good riders. I have to have very good riders, and not. I think there's a little bit of a notion that send it to your man for break and whoever he is, and after they're young horses they'll be all right. But people don't. I don't think people realise the impact of that breaking process, and that first starting off training. It creates, especially those better horses that might be a little bit sharper or a little bit quirky. It's fundamental that they get off on the right foot. And we see on a week-to-week basis those type of horses that have been started, sure, probably to somebody's best ability, but it's probably not quite good enough. And it takes a lot of retraining and messing about, I suppose, to put it bluntly, to get them back on track. So I think fundamentally the biggest thing we have to have is very, very good riders. And horse people. There's people that can ride, but they're not horsemen or women, and vice versa for that matter. But I think horse people that ride very well is hugely important to us. And our whole team, whether they're riders or yardmen or grooms of that, I would like to think that everybody in Cooley is a horseman or woman, as the case may be. And that's a very important thing for us, but fundamentally the most important thing it is for the horses. So we do, like, obviously our lunging on the cross country is something that it's funny, we started out and we made a video or two of it. Now I see there's more lunging videos on the internet, and that usually doesn't block at times with them all, and they all have the white boots and all the rest of it. But the only problem is most of them can't lunge the horse. But that's by the by. But the video cut off when the horse gets the head pulled off. But anyway, it's funny with the way things go about. But as they say, the greatest form of flattery is copying you or whatever. But anyway, it's funny. But we do the cross country lunging. I think new girl that's just spending a couple of months with us. She bought a horse off us, and she came and she was asking me about it yesterday, and I said, well, the best way I can describe it to you is it's like insurance. I'd almost be afraid to send the horse off now without doing it, because we've done it so many times with every horse, and it's kind of worked that I literally won't let a horse out of the place without doing it now. I just feel if it's done, that fundamental start off in the cross country process, they're going to most likely be able to do their cross country well. So the lunging is another huge part, and I'm lucky that Jesse Law, that works with us here, he is taking on some of it now, because it's kind of quite a difficult thing to do well, and you have to be of a certain kind of stature. They're strong, especially out in a sort of open cross country field. Young horses, they're going to pull you around a bit, and you need to be just kind of the same size as me, or he probably doesn't want to think he's as fat as me, but he's not as fat as me, but he's the same size. and he's strong, and he's tactful. He's a horseman, So that's another huge thing. The other thing is the hacking here, which I was talking about earlier. Massive thing for the young horses, and the more and more we buy horses, so sort of from modern setups, and certainly any of the horses that come from abroad, they really haven't experienced that so much. They've been from the stable to the school, and even here in Ireland, I think more and more the thing is becoming a bit more European in that sense, that lots of guys, of course, still hack their horses, but you'd be amazed how many kind of don't anymore. The roads are too busy, and people sometimes don't have the facility to do it, which is fair enough. But the hacking for us is a huge asset, and we also, it's not just hacking, we can train them in the woods a little bit, especially the green horses, if they're whatever, learning their first things about going on the bridle or whatever, maybe trotting along a roadway where they have two sides and you can sort of push them forward rather than trying to sort of battle with them in a school. Train them a lot, again, in a sort of a fast and efficient process. So there's lots of things to it, but I think fundamentally, if you have horse people around the horses and the horses are comfortable and you know, they're well bedded and well fed and well rugged, you know, I think horses for the most part will always, you know, they thrive off being looked after and being understood. Again, the horse people is the key, and we're lucky in Ireland that there is horse people, and there's a reasonable supply of them. Like everywhere, I think there's less and less, but there is a reasonable supply of them, you know.
And what about the riders that you have previously worked with? Because you've been both pretty open. I actually think it's a genius marketing strategy that has worked really, really well in that respect. In so much as, you know, you have relationships with the likes of Oliver Townend, Liz Halliday-Sharp rides a lot of Cooley horses. If you go into Liz's yard in the US, you're almost better to ask which one isn't a Cooley horse, because she has a huge number over there. And Wills Oakton is another very, very talented young rider who loves a Cooley horse. Just tell me a bit about that relationship, because actually it's something that has worked really, really well for you, but obviously something that the riders really appreciate, and it works well for them as well.
Yeah, well, I suppose those guys, you know, they need good horses, and they need a kind of a steady supply, and they need a trusted supply. And we're happy to work with them and, you know, help with their processed marketing the horse to their particular owner or not, as the case may be. You know, they're all different, those guys. But ultimately, I suppose, when they ring and they need a horse that I will, well, sometimes I'll tell them I don't have it, so it's not a wasted trip for them. And when I say I do have it, not every time, but I would say 9 times in 10, when they come, they will buy that horse or a couple of horses that I've said, you know, will suit them. I obviously know them all very well, and I know what they like riding, and I sort of know the things they like and the things they don't like. And again, I think the scenario which we dropped on earlier there was, you know, the case that if they get one that just isn't quite what I thought it was, or they thought it was, or whatever, that we can sort that out quick and efficiently. And, you know, whether that's for them as a rider or the owner that they're working with, that's it's a big thing for them, that they're not sort of stuck in a corner, to put it in one way, I suppose. So there's lots to it, and those guys like Liz, for example, had bought horses before she bought any Cooley horse, and probably, you know, with a limited maybe amount of success, and then she came and we sold her a good one and sold her another good one, and, you know, I kind of quite quickly realised what I think, you know, she likes riding and what she needed to progress her team, and obviously she rides extremely well. So it was, you know, a matter of putting them together then. So it doesn't mean that these guys don't buy a horse anywhere else. Of course they do, but it kind of means that maybe when they have the big owner that needs the big results, and, you know, if they might ring me first, and if I have it, they might buy it, you know.
Yeah, I think that's that. And what about the one thing that I think has been very, very clear to me, and I think to anybody listening to this show, the work ethic of the entire Sheane team and the Cooley Farm team is just absolutely incredible. How do you juggle everything, Georgie? Because, I mean, you've got 3 kids, you've got a thriving business, you've got a family, you've got, you know, all of these different balls to juggle. I mean, everybody else wants to know how to buy their best horse. I want to know how to master the art of successful juggling all of these different things, because it's huge credit to you all.
Yeah, well, I don't do a good job juggling it. I do my very best, but I don't do. But I'm really fortunate. My sister Scarlett works with me, and she helps me. We decided from the very start, and to go back to my earlier point, was that we love our business and we love what we do, but the most important thing are our kids, and we want our kids to be in this business. If they choose when they're older not to go to horses or to do that, that's fine. But for the moment, we want them to be a part of this business. So it means that I don't have very much childcare, which I get very upset about, but they're very good kids. Our eldest, Arthur, is 11, and he is a genius on a tractor, and he works on the farm. And then we have a middle girl, Ellie, who's obsessed with riding, and a younger one. So I have to manage them on the side, and then we have great staff, but there's a lot of them. But my biggest issue really would always be Richard. He is a great man at buying and selling a horse, but he actually can't do anything else than that. Like washing his teeth would be a real struggle in the morning unless you told him, here's the toothbrush and here's the toothpaste. And I know people say I enable him, but I actually blame his mother for that. So I'm only dealing with a legacy issue. But like we're both lucky. We were raised in families where we were taught to work, you know, and it's my absolute mantra is that you lead from the front, and we try to lead from the front. We wouldn't ask anyone to do anything that we wouldn't do. I try to be on the yard first, and Richard is always on the yard last in the day, and that's it. And we had to say goodbye to Katie O'Sullivan, who worked for us for over 9 years. She's taking a break for a while, and I was just giving a goodbye speech, and I really meant what I said, which is you wouldn't get up and do this job for the love of money, because even if we made any money, Richard would spend it on another horse. So that's not an option. You're not going on any fancy holidays, and you're certainly not going to any fancy shops to buy fancy clothes. So what I get up to do it for, slightly different from Richard. Richard gets up because he loves selling horses, but I get up in the morning and do it because I love the people I work with, and we have such fun. It's not always easy, and we do work really hard, but actually kind of working hard is fun. So I always feel sad for the people that don't really like to work hard. So like you miss out a bit. I'm like, now there is a point where I'd like to say I'd like to maybe go for, I did kind of ask Richard 2 days ago. I said, I'm bet now I need to go for 2 days away, but that would not be an option. Like he just looks at you like, no, you may just pull yourself together and keep going. So one day I'll probably just clap the heat. But for the moment, we like working, and we live in heaven. If I could just show you, like we're living in heaven, it couldn't be better. So you wouldn't achieve what we've achieved without hard work.
No, and like you said at the top of the show, actually, if somebody had have handed you a wad of money, it wouldn't have been. It might have been easier, but it wouldn't have been better.
No,
it wouldn't have been. No, definitely not.
One thing, and I totally agree. We work very hard. Georgie works the hardest of all, but you have to work clever too. I see a lot of people in the horse industry, and they work extremely hard, but they don't work clever. And you have to in this business. I think you really have to be thinking that way. You know, you need to work hard, but you need to work clever. And it's a combination of that. But keep working is a mantra of mine. I just keep going. But I like it. I wouldn't want to do anything else, and I don't like not working. I hate going on holidays. Absolutely dread it. But horrendous how people want to go on holiday. I have no idea. But anyway, it's dreadful. Carry on. But I just love working. But we're very lucky. I'm working at something that I dreamed of, I suppose, and that I want to do. And that's I fully understand not everybody has that opportunity. But I love working. I love working, and I think there's a lot of people come and go in the industry, and they think they're going to come in and turn it all around, do this, that, and the other. But the reality of anything, I think, if you want to be successful, you have to work. Like you only have to look at those guys. Like Oliver he's an animal to work, and he's world number one.
Absolutely. I absolutely love, Georgie, your point of, working hard is great fun, because that would certainly be a mantra in our house as well. And to a degree, I think there's a lot to be said for that. Can I sort of touch upon a few of those? You've had some brilliant horses do brilliant things. Cooley Masterclass gave you your first Cooley 5-star win. You've had horses on podiums at championships, young horse classes, all of those things. Is there a moment that stands out as an achievement or a result that you are most proud of at this stage?
Yeah, masterclass in Kentucky.
Yeah, the first. Yeah, it was just so emotional. It was so emotional. It was like we had worked so hard, and we had climbed Everest. It was like summiting Everest. And I remember, Richard and Ollie on the phone, and they were both crying. And I thought, it was. No matter what happens from now, we'll never beat that it was worth it.
And what about what next? And actually this, I will just touch upon this very quickly before we go on to what next. In terms of the market for horses at the moment, so in the last couple of years, have you noticed a difference since COVID in terms of supply and demand? How has that been for you? Because certainly over here in the UK, everything seems to be unbelievably hot in terms of selling horses. Have you noticed that? What impact has it had? How have you sort of changed the way you work at all in that respect?
I wouldn't say we've changed a whole lot, but the market it's hot, there's no doubt, and the price of horses is high. I would say your leisure horses and stuff, that's really jumped. Our horses, definitely have they're more expensive to buy and obviously more expensive to sell then, but I wouldn't say quite the same jump as we'll say the leisure horse, like a hacking stroke riding club horse is double price basically now, if not a bit with it. I wouldn't say our horses are double priced. Well, they're not, definitely not. But it has been, so through COVID was a huge marketing tool for I suppose, it was the biggest, we'll say, internet sales marketing ploy that ever would have come off by default, if that makes sense. There was obviously before then there was a bit, but it really pushed it. That wasn't something we really jumped at too much. Our clients they're not really into buying horses off videos or looking at them on in that scenario. They want to come and try them. So for us, we had a quiet time through COVID. But it was actually, for us, a nice time, and I know a lot of people have got a lot of hardship through it and so on. So, but for us personally, it was a nice kind of a little enforced break, and it was nice. But the market, there's definitely some pent up demand. Like we've had a lot of clients here this week, and I could have more. We could have clients every day at the minute if we had the horses or wanted them, So it definitely, there's a pent up demand, and there was never more people looking for horses than there are now, and across the eventing we do some jumpers now too, and the both are very buoyant markets at the moment. There's no question about that.
Okay, so going back to I find that really interesting actually, because I think it's something that a lot of people have speculated about. A lot of people have said, it's very, very hot, or have things changed, and it's just putting it into perspective, I guess, as to where we currently are at. Another thing that when you talk about the leisure horses, I wonder if actually, every horses cost a lot of money to produce up to a level, and if you're looking to buy a horse for a couple of £1,000, that actually it would have cost a hell of a lot more to get to that point in the first place. And then maybe things are catching up with where they.
And you could say that a lot of those horses were probably sold under value at a point. I always say those. Again, we were on about the breeders earlier, but there's a very definite scenario in the sense that people, if they have a good product, they need to get a fair price. And that's whether that's a leisure horse or a 3-year-old or a foal or whatever it happens to be. Like, nobody really likes losing money on their thing. So I think a fair price for horses is important for the whole process. But I also feel an inflated price kind of takes it away from reality and is not a good thing. But a fair price is very important.
I think that's a good point. Okay, going back to the sort of the superstars, the future superstars are the ones that I wanted to ask you about, because obviously there have been some really good Cooley horses over the last few years. And actually, just to put it into context, going back to that first international Cooley run in 2010, yes, horses running nationally before then, but one in 2010, I think there's now been just shy of 350 registered with the FEI to event. So absolutely enormous number in that respect. Have you got any horses that we can look out for in the future? That when we asked you this question 3 years ago, or 2 years ago, 3 years ago, lost a few years in COVID, 3 years ago, you brought Cooley Lancer to our attention, who we spoke in May of 2019. At the back end of 2019, he went on to win the individual gold medal at the 6-year-old Young Horse World Championships in Le Lyon. He was second at Blenheim 9-year-olds last year. He, I know, was at Bramham International jumping in the pure 140s with Piggy. So that one came off. Who's the next one that you can point us in the direction of, Richard?
A horse, actually, funnily enough, we bred him, and Wills has him. Keep It Cooley is one that I think could do anything. I think he's done 3 intermediates. He's definitely won a couple of them. He might have been second in the other one, but he's a machine, that horse. A really, really good horse. He's by Ramiro B, actually, and out of a Master Imp dam, so that's obviously very similarly bred to Master Class, but it's not just the breeding. He's just a really, really good horse. We bred him here at Cooley Farm, actually, which we'd breed sort of maybe 8 or 9 every year, but it's kind of more of a hobby part of the thing. But anyway, we bred him, and he does look like a very, very good horse.
And Will's an unbelievably talented jockey. We had this conversation before we started recording, actually, because I laughed last year when I sort of was unofficially dubbed the president of the Wills Oakden fan club, which I think terrified poor Wills completely. But he's a really, really good jockey. He's very underrated and very, very competitive.
Yeah, serious rider. Serious rider. And a very nice fella and a proper horseman.
Can I ask you, does it give you, Georgie, I know the breeding side of things is very much something that you absolutely love. Does it give you an extra little ounce of satisfaction? Obviously, you love following the horses anyway, but if it's one that you've bred, are they a little bit more special at home as well?
Yeah, no, not a little bit. A lot. Yes. I have them driven mad here. I have a lovely horse, lovely 5-year-old horse that we bred in Filavella out of a Tacit Dam, and I have them driven demented over him. So it's only a little bit of a running joke because, it is special. Of course it is a little bit more special. And I'd say for the likes of Wills, it's a total and utter nightmare because I'm on to him the whole time, annoying him, checking that the horse is okay. And then Leslie Law bought a very good another Ramiro B at our old hunting grounds here, that's in America, and Countess Cooley is her name. And I have them driven mad. I'm always on to them. But I equally, we're always on to our clients. And if they do well, we're always saying, send a picture. And if I can get a picture and I can send it on to the breeder or, whatever, it's so important. You put so much time to get these mares in foals. Existing even is such a massive effort that it's important. And then they are a little bit, they're like my little babies, really, I suppose.
Got to celebrate.
But then I sell just for the record now, I sell them in a heartbeat because I know that Richard, I could come home from a school run and it could be sold, so I'm not that attached to it.
I was gonna say, are you ever tempted to keep anything? Has there ever been a horse that you think we would just love to keep that? Would you ever go into ownership in terms of actually having a horse that went to the top yourselves?
No.
No interest.
No.
We can't afford to. We're just not.
No, it's not what we do, and it would totally and utterly change the dynamics of our business. Like I was saying earlier about that professional that rang yesterday morning, the horses are here to be sold. No other reason. Okay, some of them might stay and be produced for even a couple of years, but ultimately they're here to be sold. And if we went down that route of, they're looking at all the horses and say, well, Jenny, maybe what about that one? Maybe, oh no, you want to keep that one. That's the best one.
I was going to say.
That's just not a dynamic we want to create. I think everybody that comes here gets a fair crack of the whip. Is concerned seeing what's there on that day, and as well, the horses change here very regularly. Like there would never be a week, or very rarely a week goes by that some horses don't leave and some horses arrive. So, you could be there on Thursday and see a bunch, and the following Tuesday you see kind of a different bunch. Of course, some of the same ones will be there, but in general it's changing a lot. So the manner of that means that if you arrive on the right day, you're going to see what horse. Well, arrive any day, you're going to see the horses that are there. But if you're looking for your superstar one or whatever, it's not that Of course, some of the guys that we work closely with, if a horse arrives that I think they would like, I will give them a call and say, look, guys, there's this horse here. But many, many times, let it be Wills or Oliver or Liz or whoever. So, well, that's great, Richard, but at the moment we don't. They don't have an owner to buy it, or they don't have the time to come and see it, or they don't, whatever the case may be. So I think to change that dynamic in the business would be bad for us, to put it bluntly.
We don't want to travel, so therefore if you had a horse and it was eventing in England, we wouldn't go and watch it because we'd be too busy working here, so that would be an utter disaster.
No, you make a very, very good point. Look, it has been absolutely fascinating to chat to you both, and thank you both so much for your time and to give us a little insight into what it is that has put Cooley Farm on the map, but ultimately helps to push it forwards and drive it. And I have absolutely no doubt, a huge amount of hard work, determination, sacrifice, everything that goes into it. But it has been such a fascinating conversation. I'm sure our listeners have been literally, whatever they were doing, they probably stopped. You know, they're probably stables half bucked out all over the world, because certainly it is magic, and it's been lovely to hear your side of it. So thank you both very, very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Pleasure.
Listeners, we hope you have enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. The latest in our Connolly's Red Mill specials. We have got lots more coming up for you. Don't forget that the Hold Box specials, the Red Mills Hold Box specials, are still coming thick and fast. Spike with Tina Cook and Louise Jones as well from Red Mills are currently looking at sort of building your horses up for a big 3-day, how you feed them, what you can do to make sure they have everything that they need, be prepared, and also to recover as efficiently as possible as well. So do
make sure tell those guys to feed them plenty.
Feed them plenty. That's the secret, Richard. Feed them plenty and make sure it's Red Mills and you are sorted.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. So do go and check in with those. But from us now, that is all we've got time for. Thank you so much for listening. And a big thank you, as always, to Connolly's Red Mills for their support of the show. We'll be back very soon with more. Thank you for listening to the Echo Ratings Eventing podcast.
Have a wonderful day, everybody. And I look forward to having you back with us soon.
Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram for more.
Listeners, we'll speak to you again soon.